Heavy rain hammered the city that night, the kind that turns streets into rivers and makes every headlight bleed. Leah Thompson was bone-tired after a 12-hour shift at the diner, still wearing her grease-stained waitress uniform, blonde hair twisted into a damp knot. In the back seat, her 5-year-old daughter Maya slept curled up in her favorite pink dress, tiny shoes swinging with every turn of their rattling old sedan. Near the edge of town, Leah spotted him, an old man clinging to a lamppost, soaked to the skin, no umbrella, no coat, just a thin wool blazer plastered to his narrow shoulders. He looked lost, fragile, and very cold. She almost kept driving. Midnight strangers aren't usually a good idea. But something in the way his shoulders shook, more from exhaustion than chill, made her ease off the gas. She pulled over, rolled the window down an inch, rain blowing in. "You okay out there?" He turned, blinking through the water streaming off his white hair. "Phone died. Thought I could walk it. Turns out I'm older than my pride." There was dignity in his voice, even while shivering. Leah unlocked the passenger door. "Get in. Let me take you home." He hesitated only a second, then climbed in, dripping on the mat. She cranked the weak heater anyway. They rode mostly in silence until he said, "You didn't have to stop." "I know," she answered, eyes on the slick road. "But I couldn't leave someone's grandpa drowning on the sidewalk." A soft chuckle. "Walter," he offered. "Leah," she said. "Sleeping Beauty back there is Maya." He glanced at the child and smiled like he was remembering something sweet and far away. When he gave his address, Leah's eyebrows lifted. It was the richest part of town, gated and manicured. She said nothing, just followed his quiet directions until they reached a wide brick house glowing behind hedges. The downpour hadn't let up. She parked, jumped out, and came around to help him avoid the deepest puddle, steadying his arm all the way to the porch. Only when the inside lights flicked on did she jog back to her car, soaked and shivering herself. She never asked his last name. The next morning she was fired. 15 minutes late after dropping Maya at daycare, Leah rushed into the diner still damp from the night before. Her boss, Steve, had been waiting for an excuse. He humiliated her in front of the breakfast crowd, told her kindness didn't pay bills, and demanded her apron. She laid it on the counter without a word and walked out, chin high, eyes stinging. She didn't notice the older gentleman in the corner booth watching the whole scene over his tea. By noon someone knocked on the door of her tiny apartment. A tall man in his early 30s, calm blue eyes, raindrops still clinging to his navy coat. "Miss Thompson, I'm Julian Weston. My father is Walter." It clicked. The old man from the storm. Julian thanked her with a sincerity that caught her off guard. Said his father had come home from the hospital not long ago, had been fading, but last night he'd smiled for the first time in months. Then he offered her a job, part-time companion for Walter. Nothing clinical, just company, tea, conversation, someone to care. Flexible hours, good pay. She glanced at Maya coloring at the kitchen table and thought of the stack of bills on the counter. She said yes. 3 afternoons a week turned into almost every day. Maya came to after preschool, filling the big house with crayons and questions and sticky fingerprints. Walter lit up around the little girl. Julian started cooking dinners none of them wanted to end. Quietly, carefully, 4 lonely people became something that looked a lot like family. Then came the afternoon Maya accidentally knocked a small wooden box off a shelf in Julian's study. It hit the floor and split open, spilling a worn string of turquoise beads. His mother's bracelet, made for him when he was 10, the last thing her shaking hands ever finished for him. Julian walked in just as the beads scattered. He went still, not angry, worse, hollowed out. Leah's stomach dropped. She gathered Maya, apologized, offered to replace it, anything. Julian only said, "It's okay," in a voice that meant it wasn't. They left early that day. The untouched scones went cold on the sunroom table. 4 days passed in aching silence. Leah sent a text resigning. Walter replied only, "You matter." On the 5th day, Maya sat on the living room rug stringing plastic beads from a craft kit, tongue between her teeth in concentration. When she finished, she wrote in purple crayon, "I'm sorry I broke your shiny bracelet. This one's not shiny but it's full of love. Love, Maya, age 5. Walter delivered it himself. Julian read the note alone in his study. He slipped the childish, rainbow bracelet onto his wrist, right above his expensive watch, and cried, really cried, for the first time since his mother died. That night he showed up at Leia's door holding the bracelet like it was made of gold. "I was never mad at her," he said, voice rough. "I missed you both so much it scared me." Maya peeked around her mom's legs. Julian crouched, showed her the bracelet already on his wrist. "Wearing it tomorrow," he promised. "And every day after." Maya launched herself at him. Leia stood there crying for reasons that felt like the opposite of sorrow. Weeks turned into months. The big house filled with laughter, small shoes by the door, crayon drawings taped to the fridge. One soft rainy afternoon in the backyard, Maya leaned her head on Julian's shoulder and asked, "If we stayed here forever, would you be my daddy?" Leia froze, ready to hush her, but Julian only cupped the little girl's cheek and answered, "That would be the greatest honor of my life." Some nights later, at a dinner table crowded with friends and neighbors, Walter raised a glass to the woman and child who had brought his house back to life. Julian stood, took Leia's hand, and asked her to marry him right there in front of everyone. Maya, mouth full of breadstick, shouted, "Say yes, Mommy." Before Leia could answer, laughter and tears filled the room at the same time. A week later Julian pulled up to a pretty ivy-covered house the color of warm sunlight, a for sale sign already gone from the yard. "Get in," he said, smiling. "This time, let me take you home." Leia looked at the house, then at Julian, then at Maya already bouncing in the back seat. "Does this ride come with snacks and bedtime stories?" she teased, eyes shining. "Only if you sit up front," he said. She laughed, climbed in, and the three of them drove up the winding driveway together, hand in hand toward a porch light that would never feel too big or too quiet again. Sometimes all it takes is one small kindness, one ride offered in the rain, to change everything.